Welcome back to the Badass Literature Society, where badasses come together to rate and review novels recommended by you. Hi, I'm Michael.
This is Barbara.
And I'm Lauren. This month we read 13 by Steve Cavanagh. It was recommended to us by my good friend Jen Hurd on Facebook.
Like always, we'll split the podcast into two sections. First, a spoiler-free discussion and our overall score, and then a more in-depth discussion of the plot and the ending, which will obviously be spoiler-heavy, as well as our individual scores for the book. Before we get to that, let's talk about the author. Steve Cavanagh was born and raised in Belfast before leaving for Dublin at the age of 18 to study law. He currently practices civil rights law and has been involved in several high-profile cases. Selected for the Amazon Rising Stars program in 2015, an ACES Award winner in 2015 from the Arts Council of Northern Ireland. The Defense was his debut novel and also the first book in the series where 13 is from. And now Barbara is going to tell us some specs about the book.
Okay, so the book was originally published on January 25th of 2018. It is categorized as a thriller, mystery, and crime. It is 356 pages, and it currently has a 4.2 out of 5 on Goodreads, 4.4 on Amazon, a 4.6 on Barnes & Nobles, and a 4.4 on Audible. I figured we'd get that one in since Lauren uses that one.
Thank you.
I figured we started including that one for you. And it was nominated for and won the Theakston Old Peculiar Crime Novel of the Year for 2019.
All right. And Lauren, do you want to read us the back of the book?
Yes, the part that hooked me in before I even opened it. The serial killer isn't on trial. He's on the jury. They were Hollywood's hottest power couple. They had the world at their feet. Now one of them is dead, and Hollywood star Robert Solomon is charged with the brutal murder of his beautiful wife. This is the celebrity murder trial of the century, and the defense want one man on their team, con artist turned lawyer Eddie Flynn. All the evidence points to Robert's guilt, but as the trial begins, a series of sinister incidents in the courtroom start to raise doubts in Eddie's mind. What if there's more than one actor in the courtroom? What if the killer isn't on trial? What if the killer is on the jury? Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun,
That is
dun.
one of the best written. What is that called? Like little synopses,
Synopses,
or like
yeah.
What they call it, like a something pitch, like elevator pitch or something like that.
Elevator pitch, yeah.
Yeah, in the book world, like that is the best one I've ever heard.
Like I already knew I was gonna like this book just based on the back, and that never happens.
Yeah,
100% true.
Agreed.
I would challenge anybody who is into like crime thriller books to listen to or read that on the book and not be at least a little bit interested about reading this one.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start where we always start. What did you guys think about 13? And remember, no spoilers. Barbara, you want to go first?
Sure. So I absolutely loved this book. It's been a long time, I feel like, since we've read a thriller crime mystery novel, at least for me, since, I mean, I know we read What's-Her-Face's Robert Galbraith book, but I had already read that, so it doesn't really count. And I really, really fell in love with this one. It had some great WTF moments and great what the heck plot points and swish and bait tricks and all the jams and great characters with a really fast-paced plot. Couldn't ask for more in a book, honestly. Just amazeballs.
So I also loved it. Exquisitely crafted plot twists, of which there were many. And it had me going this way and that way and then back this way. And then, nope, it's going to go back that way. It was all over the place. A page turner. Got to a point in the book where I literally could not put it down. This book had everything that I would want from a book in this genre.
This genre is my jam. Cavanagh did an amazing job checking all the boxes for the genre. It was very satisfying. The plot twists were amazing. The characters were well fleshed out. And I, as you guys know, if you've listened to our podcast before, I really love the perspective writing. So it had that as well, flipping back and forth between perspectives. I'm always a fan of that. And this one just really hit it out of the park for me. We haven't read one in a while that I was like, man, I really love that book. Really, I was looking back on my ratings, and I haven't rated one this high since Cinder. So,
oh, we were debating on that if this was one of your higher ones, and it was then, huh?
Guys, we don't do single ratings.
I didn't, Michael. I didn't say what I rated it. I just said it's higher. That just makes it more suspenseful for them to want to listen on.
We won't go into our individual ratings for now. You got to wait for that. But our group score for this one was an 8.25 out of 10. Pretty high rating. And like Lauren said, it was her highest. We'll get to that later. So, follow-up question, would you recommend this? And I'll start on this one. 100% yes. I'd recommend this book to pretty much anybody. If you were to ask me, like, if I recommend it and you were like, oh, well, I don't know, what is it like? I would say it's a cross between Patterson's Alex Cross character and a Grisham legal thriller. Kind of the good things for both of those series, both of those types of books. Such a wide audience for a book like this. I can't really think of anybody that I wouldn't recommend it to be honest, unless it's someone who just outright hates mystery, thriller, crime genre books. If they just like say, no, I hate those books, then obviously...
You don't want to be friends with them anyway, so... Obviously,
you're not going to recommend it. And yeah, maybe you just end your friendship at that point. That's a little harsh, but maybe that's what you do.
I've ended many friendships that way.
There you go. You heard it here first. Lauren, what about you? Who would you recommend this to? Or would you recommend it?
I 100% would recommend it. I would recommend it to anyone, really, because it does cover multiple genres, so it has something for everyone, in my opinion. I also think that it appeals to the courtroom, crime, lawyer crowd, like the drama crowd, and then it also appeals to the more mystery thriller crowd. So there's not really anybody that I wouldn't recommend this to because, I don't know anybody who doesn't like reading and who doesn't like reading this genre at least occasionally, because I don't need that kind of negativity in my life.
We've established that. We don't accept that type of friendship here.
God, it's harsh. It's harsh, guys. Barbara, what about you? Would you recommend it?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I also 100% would recommend it. I figured I'd throw that one in since both of you guys use that. I want to be part of the cool crowd. But yeah, I would recommend this. How rude. I would recommend this book to anyone, and I fully plan to do so. I also didn't, if people were worried if it was, overly gruesome, I didn't really find it that overly gruesome, but also take that with a grain of salt because I think my gauge for that's a little skewed, giving profession and all that jazz. So
yeah, Barbara's a sociopath.
This is true. I really enjoyed Kane's perspective. No, but yeah, 100%. I would recommend it to anyone and everyone. Now that I think about it, I really don't know anyone who doesn't like this type of genre. So I guess you have a point, Lauren.
That's a 3 for 3 recommendation, folks. For those of you leaving us now, don't forget to give us a rating if you like us, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Both places our handle is @BadassLitPod. We'd love to hear from you. It would mean a lot if you left us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you guys listen. We do read those, and they mean a lot to us. So we'd love to hear from you guys. If you have a book you want us to read also, let us know. Get on our Instagram, comment on it, send us a direct message, whatever you need to do. We're happy to add your book to our list. And now, before we get to the next part, a short preview of what's coming next. Lauren?
Next month, we are reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, which was recommended to us by Julie Hofstadt. And I just want to say that I have been wanting to read this book for so long, and I know that Barbara has too, and I think that it's been on Michael's list, so we're all pretty stoked for next month's book.
I literally bought it when it came out, and I have a signed edition, so yeah, pretty stoked about it.
Yes, so the preview on the back. France, 1714. In a moment of desperation, a young woman makes a Faustian bargain to live forever and is cursed to be forgotten by everyone she meets. Thus begins the extraordinary life of Addie LaRue, in a dazzling adventure that will play out across centuries and continents, across history and art, as a young woman learns how far she will go to leave her mark on the world. But everything changes when, after nearly 300 years, Addie stumbles across a young man in a hidden bookstore, and he remembers her name.
Another dun-dun-dun moment.
I'm so excited!
We're all excited for this one.
Yep.
So remember, the second part of our podcast is an in-depth look at the book. So if you do want to read 13, and I say this so seriously this time, stop listening right now, because if you listen any further and you haven't read the book and you want to, it's going to ruin it for you. And so you do have to stop right now. If you want to read the book, stop. But if you already read the book or you want to keep hearing, keep listening what we're going to say, we're going to get there.
These days, more authors are including mental health content in their books. But do you ever wonder how accurate some of this stuff is?
Or do you ever read something where you know the author just gets it?
I'm Elise.
And I'm Priscilla.
And we are Novel Feelings, a podcast where we discuss mental health issues in fiction novels.
We are psychologists and book lovers, and we have a lot of opinions.
So look for Novel Feelings wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, back to your show.
Now, for those of you sticking around for the spoilers, here we go. So first thing, as always, top of every episode since the beginning of season 2, we're going to assign the Badass Character Award to somebody from this book. We'll start with Lauren's nomination. Lauren, who would you like to nominate for the Badass Character?
I just saw your nomination.
I nominate Kane as the badass character, and it's an unpopular opinion, but I'm standing by it. I say Flynn is a close second. I loved Kane. I will talk about it later on when you have future questions, but yes, that's my badass of the episode.
So just to kind of clarify for the listeners, Kane is the serial killer in the book, and Lauren has nominated the serial killer as the most badass character in the novel.
He's pretty badass.
I mean, if we're going by straight just what he did, she's not wrong.
I mean, he literally spent time researching a person to literally take over his identity. The whole thing was meticulous, planned out. The dude is a badass. I'm just saying.
He's type A personality to a point where everything is plotted years in the making.
We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll talk about Kane some more in a bit. Barbara, who would you nominate for the badass character this month?
I did Eddie Flynn just because he's a good guy, and I felt weird. I mean, I guess it's fine. We can nominate whoever, good or bad, But Eddie Flynn was the winner. But honestly, I feel like Kane and him were neck and neck right there because Kane really was a badass, but Eddie caught him, so it makes him the badassier.
Boom. So for me, I nominate Arnold, the jury. No, I'm just kidding. I nominate Eddie Flynn as well, hands down. I loved his character, and he was definitely a badass for catching Kane, the uncatchable serial killer, right? So that's who I nominated as well. So sorry, Lauren, to disappoint you, but the Badass Character Award for this book is going to go to Eddie Flynn.
But Kane will still get a medal in my heart.
You can do whatever you want to with Kane in your heart. Moving on to the next question. Another normal one. What did you guys like about the book? What did you dislike about the book? And was there a specific point in the story that really hooked you in? And I will let Barbara start on this one.
Okay, so I loved everything about this book. I really loved the plot and the characters. At first, I was a little confused, and I was wondering, where there was going to be, the mystery, or how are we going to solve anything if we already knew who the killer was, since we get two perspectives, or, 2 point of views throughout the book. I thought there wasn't going to be anything there, but actually there was a lot to unravel, a lot in your face stuff. So I was extremely happy about that. And I guess for people who didn't read the book, and why are you still listening? But just in case, the perspective is Eddie Flynn in first person, and then Kane is in third person. And you switch out, the book switches out between both of theirs pretty regularly, I would say, almost back and forth. So the author literally leads you into this false sense of thinking you know what's going on so well. I remember I had this wait, hold on a second, suspicious feeling, and asked Michael about it. And then he confirmed my suspicions. And then I went digging through past chapters. And then I had an, oh, naughty author moment, which was just glorious. Absolutely loved it. And like I mentioned, Eddie and Kane are the two main characters. But there were a lot of really cool supporting characters, and they really shined for me as well. I enjoyed Harper and Delaney, and how they really helped Eddie solve the mysteries. And I feel like that helped make him more of a three-dimensional character, because it wasn't just him solving everything. He had a bit of help between those two women. I really enjoyed how creepy Kane was, and let me tell you, he was freaking creepy. The only thing I feel like would be my nitpicky for dislike about it was just at first how perfect he felt and perfect he did everything. He just was so good at everything. And I also found it a little convenient that Eddie comes along and just unravels everything Kane did in years of planning and meticulous planning in just a few days, but I still enjoyed his perspective. His perspective was extremely interesting, really.
To be fair, though, the FBI did a lot of the legwork for Eddie.
Sure. Right. He had help in that sense. So yes, but still, it's just real convenient. And then my only other gripe was just how much like we didn't get much on Holton as the secondary murderer person at all, and like his motives and why he was helping Kane and why he wanted to help Kane all these years. And obviously what hooked me in was just chapter 1. Like there was no need, like that was just hook, line, sinker for me. Like I enjoyed it from chapter 1 on.
So for me, like Barbara said, I loved the plot and the characters too. Like I mentioned earlier, it had all the right elements for this genre. And there were some genuine edge of your seat moments. I don't know if is that the right phrase when you're talking about a book? Like, is there a book phrase for edge of your seat? Because that's like a theater reference.
I've never had that. No,
I don't know. I read on the edge of my seat.
Well, good for you, weirdo.
I feel like we've had this discussion before when you've mentioned this again, and we both made jokes about it. So nothing's changed.
If you're listening right now and you're thinking, I know this, I know what it is, comment on our Instagram and tell me, what is the book version of edge of your seat? Because I'd love to know.
Sweating under your pits? I don't know.
Weird. It's not that. Anyway, so there were some genuine edge of your seat moments. I was hooked before I picked up the book, to be honest. The premise of this was unique. And I figured it would either be really good or really bad based on the premise. And thankfully, it was really good. As far as dislikes, I struggled really to think of one. Except, damn you, Steve Cavanagh. No, I'm just kidding. I'm awful at predictions. I'm just going to say that right now. So because I'm awful at predictions, I walked into every twist and shocking moment, of which this book has a ton, unexpected. And I loved that about the book. I love that the book was able to do that for me. And so I didn't have any dislikes. The only thing I could think of, similar to what Barbara said, was just at the beginning of the book, when you first are introduced to Kane, he seems perfect. Like the perfect killer. He does this, he does that. He's perfect. He could never get caught. There's nothing that can ever catch him. And I kind of rolled my eyes at that at first. And it was irritating that he was that way until it wasn't, right? But other than that, I think that all my dislikes, the author quickly kind of got rid of as I continued to read the book. Lauren, what about you?
So I loved the storyline, just like the storyline itself, the plot. It was original. Even just reading the back of the book drew me in instantly, like I talked about earlier. It was masterfully written. I loved the perspective writing. I liked that it was written in a timeline of the trial, so I liked that we kind of got that sequential thing happening. I loved the legal and court side of it. The lawyers going back and forth with their lines of questioning, that was particularly intriguing to me. And it just was enjoyable, like just to see that the author went to the extent of creating those characters as well. In such a way that, like, I'm trying to think of the specific scene, but basically just like lining their lines of questioning up strategically to have the defendant slip up, and I enjoy reading that sort of thing. The hybrid crime and courtroom drama genre was what did it for me. I am a sucker for true crime or anything crime and courtroom related in general, TV, movies, books. And then pair that with my other favorite genre of thriller and mystery. It was really just, I'd read this again. I plan to read this again just to be able to find the Easter eggs and foreshadowing that I missed out on the first time. Because like Barbara said earlier, she went back and like tried to find it. I don't have time to do that, but I plan on reading this again and then being able to kind of see some of the things that I might have missed listening to it the first time. Because yes, I did listen to this on Audible. If you would like to pay us for ads, we would be happy to advertise for you.
Yes, come on, Audible. No. So let's talk about Kane. How was Kane as an antagonist? How was he as the bad guy? And I'll start on this one. Kane, what a great bad guy. Almost too great, right? I'm not going to go over the whole thing about me rolling my eyes when he was perfect, because I already said that earlier. But I do want to talk about this. So on top of all those things that made him the perfect killer, he also felt no pain. Had some nerve disorder that kept him from feeling any pain in his entire body. At the beginning, it just seemed like too much. But the way that Cavanagh weaved the tale, it just worked. Yes, Kane was very skilled in the 1% of killers, according to Agent Delaney of the FBI in the book. But that skill allowed for Eddie's character to really shine, so it worked out. And then I also wrote that the annoying feel no pain thing ended up making for an insanely intense climax to the book. Because it did. Like I assume we're going to talk about that a little bit later, so I won't go into it in detail now. But the feel no pain thing definitely ended up making the book more intense at the end. So again, it just worked. It's also very interesting to have half the story told from Kane's perspective. I feel like you don't see, or at least I haven't seen, a lot of books where you get half of it from the killer's perspective and then half of it from the protagonist's perspective. And so that, for me, made the cat and mouse game they were playing even more interesting because we got to see his perspective on top of it, too. Lauren, what about you?
Kane is my favorite character in this book. I kind of alluded to that earlier. And he's my favorite. It's not because I like him. Like, obviously, he's a bad guy. He's a baddie. But he's completely amazing at being an evil serial killer. It's evident that the author, Cavanagh, put a lot of time, effort, and thought into writing his character specifically. I mean, I feel like he did a really good job of writing all the characters, but especially the Kane's character. Taking us into his past, exploring his inability to feel pain, and just the depth of his character was really intriguing. He's clearly a psychopath, but he is also knowledgeable and charismatic at the same time. And just the way that he meticulously plans everything out, and all of, like, down to the details of writing and the way that a person talks and the cadence that they use and, like, the way that they motion with their hands when they talk. Like, just getting to, like, see inside his brain was really cool, and that was really well done by Cavanagh. And then just the lengths at which Kane will go to carry out his crimes was really intense. So, I loved him.
Oh, Kane. Like I mentioned earlier, he did seem a little too perfect in everything he did. Like both of you guys mentioned, like he didn't feel any pain. So that was an interesting aspect of his character, especially when he was a kid and like the whole story of him falling off a tree and his little arm was all broken and he didn't even realize it. I thought that was kind of humorous, what probably shouldn't have been humorous, but I still giggled. 1 point for him being Superman, right? Point number 2, like he got so good in mimicking other people to the point where he pretty much, I mean, that's what he does is, you know, he kills people and then likes to be a juror in the crime to make sure, or in the process to make sure that someone else gets pinned for the crime that he committed. So he's really, really good at doing that. Another thing is to do that, then he gets really good at being makeup. And maybe it's just me being jealous that he can, you know, be real good at doing makeup and I can't. I don't know. Maybe that's why I hated him so much. But so that's another thing. Like he's really good at that. Then he's really good at like penmanship and how to perfectly use someone's like writing techniques and all this stuff. So it's just like, holy crap. Like,
so are you jealous of Kane? Is that like, are you jealous?
I said of his makeup skills, Michael, if you were paying attention.
And his penmanship, it sounds like, from what you just said.
I don't care about his penmanship. I mean, I have crappy handwriting. It's whatever.
I'm jealous of Kane.
She says in the creepiest voice possible.
So it's like all these things just makes him like this perfect serial killer, right? But when I first thought of all this, like I kind of was like, okay, fine, whatever. And I thought I wasn't going to like him, but like the more chapters I got of his, like the more, and it's kind of weird going to sound like, the more I enjoyed him. And I didn't enjoy him, I enjoyed his character. Like the more I really wanted to read his perspective or his point of view in the book, just to kind of see like what crazy antics he's going to get into and how he's going to pull this crap off. And he does, like magically, or not magically, just like methodically he does it. And it's insane to me. And he's a weird dude. Like he has a weird perspective. It's interesting to get into that kind of a headspace. And I just enjoyed reading that and about his background too. I enjoyed the little bits and pieces that we got about his mom and the reasoning of why he started murdering these people in the first place. The, you know, disillusioned American dream and how he felt like his mom didn't get that and he didn't get that. So he didn't want these people to get that either. So hands down, great antagonist. A little too perfect. Sure. But you know, what man isn't and written in a guy's perspective in a book, right? Name of the wind looking at you.
Wow. It's unnecessary shade. So moving on from Kane, let's talk about the red herring, the big red herring in this book. Cavanagh did a masterful job keeping the juror who Kane was actually impersonating a secret, but he didn't seem that way. Did you think it was Alec Wynn, or did you figure it out before the big reveal? And I believe it is Lauren's turn to go first this time.
I did not predict this one. I fully believed that he was impersonating Alec the entire time until the reveal. Especially because there were so many like comments and like different things that alluded to the fact that he was Alec, like he was portraying Alec. So it was really well done in that sense by Cavanagh to make you just believe, even though it wasn't directly said, apparently, that he was impersonating Alec. That was definitely what I thought. Like I said before, I do want to read it again so that I can catch all of the hints going forward, because I know that Barbara's going to talk about that a little bit.
Yes.
Speaking of Barbara, go ahead.
I mean, I read this on my Kindle, which makes it difficult for me to like flip through pages. That's like the one issue with the Kindle I have. And I can like mark the book for things. But anyway, I digress. This was probably my favorite twist, hands down, of the whole book. And like I mentioned before, I had this like sus moment. And I was like, wait a second. And then I remembered reading the part where Arnold catches Kane slip. And y'all remember that chapter where even Kane is like, oh no, like I showed that I was happy and gleeful and creepy, he. And then you get the perspective of Arnold, and he's like, what the heck? I kind of saw like a juror member kind of have this like gleeful look in his face. And
so before you go any further, I just want to point out that if they ever make a movie of this, I want them to cast you as Kane's conscience with that voice. has to be that. Has to be
yes. That. Future LA producers and movie makers, here I am. Anyways, so then we get to that point where we all Arnold almost tells Eddie about it, but then was like, oh, never mind. He kind of brushes it off. And that right there is when I had a wait a second. I thought we already knew who Kane was as a juror moment. And so that's when I asked Michael, and I was like, hey, Michael, like we know who he's impersonating, right? And Michael's like, oh, yeah, but I don't exactly remember his name. But yeah, we get that. And I was like, I don't think so. So that's when I sifted through the whole freaking book and came up empty. And I was like, he never mentions who he impersonates. He drops hints of who he's impersonating. Little things here where he's by himself. He doesn't have anyone. He doesn't have a job. Or he's currently not working, I should say. And that was when I was on high alert for this. So when we get the Kane chapters a little after this scene where he slips out of the hotel room to go murder another problematic juror, rest in peace, Miguel, I think was his name. Michael? No.
It was Manuel.
Manuel. R.I.P. Manuel. He mentions how he has to handle someone else. And I immediately thought, well, poor Arnold, he's dead. Because I was like, he's going to kill him because Arnold knows too much, right? So then we get that chapter where Eddie calls Arnold to ask who the juror was that was acting all sus. And I immediately thought, he's not talking to Arnold. He's talking to Kane at this point. Arnold's already dead. And that is when, quote unquote, Arnold tells him it's Alec. And I was like, nope, it's not Alec. And I was just like, this is so good. Because if you blink, you miss that. You miss all of these little connecting things that the author literally is telling you, hey, I never mentioned him. But he does it so well that as a reader, you're just like, okay, cool. And you just move on. And it was just beautiful. I loved how he did it. I thought this was done so cleverly. And so then I kept reading after that point and then taking notes on all of the mentions of the jurors. And I also really, because at first we get these little tidbits of Arnold's character's notes about the jurors. And I'm like, why the hell does it matter? Like, I don't care, like, whatevs. And this is why. Because if once you get that, once you realize why, you go through those notes and you can literally pick out who he is by just that, if you pick up on those clues. And when I thought, like, I realized that, I had this just like, holy crap, this is so masterfully done. Because I was like, who freaking cares? These stupid little tidbits, like, why is this needed?
I literally would zone out during those times. I'm like, why do I care what Arnold thinks?
I felt the exact same way too. Like I thought, I was like, why are they including these jury notes? That's
why. Because you can pinpoint it there. There's literally only two characters who he mentions that don't have a family, who don't have a job. And it's Alec, and then the person that Kane actually was, what's his name?
Arnold.
No. Like,
it was the old man.
John. It was something like that. Like, but anyways, I was just like, so cleverly done. And I went back and read both Alec, and I think his name's John, right? It's like something like that, like something stereotypical white old man name, like James. Oops, that's not what I meant. Jim or something like that. It starts with a J. Anyways, beautiful, best moment ever. I've never had that. Oh, it was just, I don't know. I'm like speechless. And obviously I just rambled on for like 30 hours about this, but I loved it. Absolutely loved it. My favorite part of the book for me.
So yeah, Barbara rambled on for 30 hours. So thanks so much for listening this week. We're out of time. No, I'm just kidding. So before I go further, I do it like, yes, the notes I thought they were stupid. I was like, why are they putting this in there? And then it's like, oh, well, should have known. They're there for a reason. But anyway, this twist broke my brain. Like when we got to this twist in the book, it was definitely my favorite of all the plot twists in the book. And like Barbara said, we argued about this. I was so sure that the author told us that the juror he was impersonating was Alec. You know why I was so sure? Steve, because you made me think that. No, but he did. I mean, he did. He wrote it so well, and it's so tricky, and he never actually says it, but he plants all the seeds to make your brain think that and go that direction. And like Barbara said, that's just so masterfully done to trick you without you even realizing that you've been tricked. He just throws up an amazing red herring, and for the rest of the book, he talks about Alec, like I said. So naturally, you think that's who Kane is impersonating. I thought right up to the reveal that it was Alec. I did not know. I did not predict this. I had no idea. I had a brain explode moment when it happened. And then I had to go tell Barbara that she was right and admit that, like I bet
that hurt.
It did hurt my pride a little bit. No.
His little pride shriveled up even more.
But no, this and all of the other twists in the book were incredibly well done. The way that he just took it all over the place, unexpected places, was great. Moving on from there, let's talk about Flynn's family. So that's Eddie Flynn, the main character. His family plays a small but important role in this story. Do you agree with his choice to keep them distant to protect them, and then why or why not?
Yeah, I feel like we miss out a bit on his family dynamic and not reading the previous books, because technically this is the fourth one in the Eddie Flynn series. But we get enough of it to understand what is going on. And obviously some things had to have happened in those previous books to his family that made him feel that way. It was pretty apparent that his work does go home with him, since he almost died 3 times in this book alone, beat up from the cops, serial murder person literally stalking you and almost deciding to murder you at one point, and then decides, oh no. And
Barbara, those police officers were just doing their duty. They were trying to protect him from the sidewalk.
Right.
Yep.
So yeah, 100%. Does that suck? Yeah, it sucks, but it makes sense to me why he wanted to keep them away. And so I'm interested to see more of that dynamic and stuff like that. But it makes sense why he wants to. It makes sense why his wife was like, no, homeboy, your work bleeds into the family stuff, So yeah, it totally made sense to me.
So this is one of the reasons that I want to read the other books in this series. His family is in the book. It's hinted at what happened in the past and why they're separated and why he and his estranged wife believe it's better if they are not together. But I want to know the details. I want to know what happened. And I think the first 2 books will explain that. In fact, I know that the second one does, because I looked at the description and I'm pretty sure that's what it's all about. But that scene, going back to his family in this book, that scene in the diner, when Eddie meets up with his wife, estranged wife, and thinks that maybe there's a chance, he's obviously still in love with her, but he's torn between this career that he loves that puts him in harm's way all the time and wanting to be with her and his daughter, to the point, in this book, he tries to take the easy job and he's going to get out of this crazy stuff, and he can't. And so I think he realizes at that scene that that's the best thing for everybody, is for them to not be together. And as true as that may be, I thought that scene was just heartbreaking because it was so well written. You could feel, I guess because you're reading from Eddie's perspective, right? You can feel everything he's feeling as that's all happening.
Were you at the edge of your seat, Michael, while reading that?
I wasn't at the edge of my seat on that scene. I was actually, so the opposite of the edge of your seat. I was sunk in, oh no, this is terrible. No.
You shriveled up?
Yeah. That's a weird way to put that, but yeah. So
you shriveled up with your pride.
So the scene was just heartbreaking. Like I said, you could feel everything Eddie felt as his wife said those things, and it was just one hammer drop after another, and you could feel him realizing that he's losing them. And then at the very end of that scene, she leaves her wedding ring on the table, and he finds out that she's been seeing somebody else too, and Barbara just pieced out the camera. That's what she did. She said bye. And the night before the trial, right, in the book, that was a little bit... I loved that scene up until that point because it was like I get why they did it. Like, of course, it's more intense if this awful thing happens right before the trial. But anyway, I really liked the dynamic there, and that's one of the reasons I want to read the other books is to learn more about his family and what happened.
I would agree with what both of you guys said. I feel like keeping his family away, distant, keeps them safe to an extent, but also there are plenty of people with significant others with jobs where, they're in danger, like army wives and police wives, firefighter wives, all of those different situations. And so to an extent, I feel like his wife probably knew what she was getting into, but also I think maybe, you think you know what you're getting into and then things happen and you're like, okay, this is way more intense than I thought. And so, I think that, like Michael said, I think it does make me want to pick up some of the previous books to kind of get some more background on his family, because I don't think that this one really gave us a whole lot of information about that. And I know that like the whole series is based on Eddie Flynn. So, and are there 4 or 3 books?
So there's 4 out now because 13 is 3 and then 1 has come out since then and 1 is about to come out, I think. Right, Barbara? Isn't that what we found out?
13 was number 4.
I think 13 is the 3rd book in the series.
Is there a sequel then already out to 13?
I'm pretty sure there's a sequel already out
so
to 13.
So that we can know who the hell he calls at the end?
I know.
Because I need to know.
Never been so angry.
I need to know.
I was like, what the heck kind of ending is that?
But yeah, as far as this question goes,
no, you're right. It was 13 is number 4. Barbara was correct.
I know,
on that.
I was
It
right.
is the 4th book.
Yeah,
is there some more shriveling happening over there?
Are you guys seeing? Are you guys seeing why I don't like admitting she was right? Do you hear how she said that to me? God.
They're not seeing; they're hearing.
Well, that's all you need to know. So there's 3 books up until this one. 13 was 4. The 5th book, which is called 50/50, is already out, and then the 6th book comes out August 5th of this year. So it's about to come out.
So I want to read 50/50 next.
Same
so
here.
I know who he calls.
Same here.
So I want to know that too, but I want to go back. I want to read about what happened first.
No, you never go back, Michael.
Michael, the past is in the past.
Just getting ganged up on. This is anyway. Next question: were you satisfied with Holton's involvement in the plot? As a reference, Holton was Bobby's bodyguard. Or security provided by Rudy Karp, who was his original lawyer.
He's a third company security people.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. He works for he's an independent security person.
He's a rent-a-cop.
He's a little more intense than a rent-a-cop, but
he's ex-military.
He is ex-special forces, in fact.
Yeah, ex-special forces.
So the actual question here is, number 1, were you satisfied with his involvement in the plot? And number 2, did you figure out his involvement in the murders early on, or were you shocked when that all came out? I think it's my turn to go first, so I'll start on this one. So yes and no is my answer with the first question. So I was satisfied in the sense that I think if we had gotten more of Holden's part of Kane's side of this story sooner, it would have ruined the story. Because we would have known that Holden was in on it and they wouldn't have had that mystery about him being the one keeping Bobby safe the whole time. But at the same time, I wanted more. Once I figured out that Holden was the bad guy, I was like, no, why? Let's get some backstory in it. But I knew we weren't going to get it because this book was very chronological. It pushed forward. It didn't ever go back, at least not very often.
He did too.
And he died, yeah. So no one cares. But yeah, so I wanted more information about his relationship with Kane and kind of how all that started, more of what we got in the book anyway. But at the same time, I get why we didn't get it because it would have ruined the mystery. This was a pretty big surprise, at least it was for me. Because like every other twist in this book, I did not predict that Holden was bad until he turned on Eddie in the final act. Once it happens, the reveal, I immediately flashed
You didn't
back.
even realize when he answered the door? You didn't even think about that? That it literally was when he came up and was pointing the gun at him, no other time before this.
Good question. So it wasn't, I considered it at in that act because that's all part of it for me. It wasn't when he opened the door. It was when he was just like sitting there watching a baseball game, and it was more casual than I feel like he had been for the entirety of the book about Bobby's security. And in theory, this is like the most heightened he should be about Bobby's security, because Kane's on a loose and we know that he's coming for Bobby, and Holden seems too chill. That was when I got suspicious. Anyway, once it happens, the reveal, when we figure out he's Kane's silent partner, I immediately flash back to everything we knew about Kane's mystery law enforcement partner, and it all clicked. But up until that moment, when he was sitting there having a beer, watching baseball instead of protecting his client, I had zero idea he was the partner. No indication that he was a bad guy, thought he was a good guy, just a, extra side character with a little bit of personality we don't get a whole lot of. In fact, at one point in the book, I thought that I thought it was a law enforcement partner. So I was really zoned in on that. I think that was my issue. I wasn't thinking about, as Lauren said, like a rent-a-cop or third-party security. So I thought it was actually one of the cops what was the cop's name? The one that
It's just the cops that did him dirty.
Well, there were two cops. So there was one.
The first one that he screwed over about the prostitute lady.
Yes.
Because he lied about the prostitute lady.
And then the big dude.
McDonald's cup thing. And then the big dude who he brought with him, and a bunch of other dudes that tried beating up Eddie.
They kicked his ass.
Well, they only did because after the fact, but Eddie pretty much broke his arm. So that was a cool moment.
That's true. So anyway, I thought that I thought it had to be one of them because they were dirty. They were already like revealed to be bad cops that were doing bad things. And I was like, oh, well, it would make perfect sense.
Kane wouldn't do that because he's too smart.
Right, which that was all obviously revealed in that crazy scene where they kidnapped him. The police officers, kidnapped Eddie with the intention of killing him. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about here. But that was a super intense scene. But yeah, so Holden loved his involvement, had no idea that he was the bad guy until the end. Lauren, what about you?
So I knew that he was shady. Like, I got vibes about him earlier on as far as just his, I don't know. I thought that I didn't anticipate to the extent of any of his involvement, but I did dislike him as a character, and I didn't really understand why. So I knew something was off. I think that the way that it was done was really good. Like, as I said a minute ago, Kane isn't going to pick a known dirty cop to be the one that gives him his inside information or helps him. It's going to be, somebody that people wouldn't think. Also, just the fact that, like, he's so, I don't know, and this is kind of awkward. I'm not a serial killer, you guys, but...
when you preface this with that, sus...
Yeah, that's pretty sus. I think if you have to say I'm not a serial killer, like, that's concerning to me.
But I'm not a serial killer, but I do... I do admire the fact that, like, this whole thing was so planned out. It's so far in advance. The fact that, like, literally the security guard, like, down to the, I don't know, just those details are very satisfying to me. And I'm not a killer, but the details that the author, who might be a killer because, like, who knows how to write it like this? Like, what? The details and the different things that all connect, like, Michael, like you said, you go back and you're like, oh shit, like, this whole thing connected the whole time. Like, it takes a really good author to do that. And then the author is obviously making Kane look like this mastermind because he created it. I didn't predict it, but I was really impressed by it.
Barbara, what about you?
So I wanted to learn more about Holden. I wanted to know what motivated him. Was he like Kane and just disillusioned with a certain aspect of life and then decided to rebel against it? Or like Kane, did he want to punish those people who he felt wronged by? Or was he just straight up psychopath who just enjoyed killing for the sake of it? We don't know. I also wanted to learn how he and Kane met and how their relationship progressed into what it was. Because we got little hints of it through Kane, but I wanted to know more. And I also wanted to know how Harper felt about the whole Holden situation since she, like, slept with him. Awkward. So I feel like that would be, like, a really mind F to someone that, when you learn that at any point he could have, like, killed you. I would think, like, why didn't he? Or was he just toying with me? Did he actually like me? And if he actually did like me, what does that say about me for liking a murderer back, So PTSD moments there. I feel like once we learned who was helping Kane out, we only had 3 people who it could have been, unless the author chose to have it be like a 4th unknown person we never met, and then that would have pissed me off, and I'm really glad he didn't do that, because I hate when, as a reader, we don't get to figure out the mystery. Like, the author doesn't give us everything we need to know to figure it out. So I'm really glad that the author didn't do that. I'm glad that we had options and we met who the second killer was. With that, we know that Kane's partner was a cop, or is a cop. He never mentions that he wasn't a cop. He just says, like, he is a cop, or he has connections. And so right there, then you have 3 options. Your 3 options are the 2 dirty cops that we met early on that beat up Eddie, that Michael mentioned, or Holton, because he's the only other person that we know by name that was a cop. So once you learn the dirty cops weren't the ones involved, but, they do try to kill Eddie and try to cover it up. Yikes. That whole plot mess was, woo. The last person would have to be Holton in that scenario. I didn't solve that one as early as I would have liked, because I actually thought it was going to be like one of the dirty cops too, up until they grabbed him from the courthouse, essentially. And I was like, okay, there's no way Kane would want it to be like this intense, because he's more of a methodical, no one sees me, kill him type thing, not a rushed, messy thing how they did it. So, I mean, at that point, I feel like it was a little late to figure out that it was Holton, but he did such a good job, because, like, he mentions, like, Holton was the one who grabbed the dollar bill to be able to frame Eddie for the murder of Arnold. And that was just, like, so well done. Because even, like, there's a very distinct point in that part where I remember him saying, like, he grabbed the dollar bills to try to pay. And Holton's like, no, I got this. Gave it back. Like, the author made sure you read that. And I was like, ugh, I missed that. So annoyed. But anyways.
On that note, just real quick, the mechanics that they used and the length they went to frame people was insane. Once that was revealed, like how he was doing that, that was a mind-blown moment for me, for sure.
Yep.
Was that the end of your thing?
I mean, I guess, but yes, no. Yeah.
Okay, just double checking.
Just brutally interrupted.
I thought I did. I'm so sorry. Moving on from there, was the book the right length? Were there any parts you wanted the author to expand on, or sections that you thought should be shorter? And Lauren, it is your turn.
So I think the length was perfect. I did want the author to expand on some things, but I do think that expanding on too many things would have been detrimental overall to the book, because you don't want it to drag or be too long, because that can kind of deter readers as well. I don't know. I think I enjoyed the length, and like I said, I think if he included every detail that I would want included, it would end up being like a Lord of the Rings length book, and I'm not trying to read that.
Some random shade thrown at fantasy again. Not surprising, though, from you, Lauren. Barbara, what about you? What did you think about the book length?
So I feel like I've answered this one in my previous ramblings, let's be honest, but I mean, yes, I would have liked to have seen a few things expanded on. Obviously, the whole Holton and Kane relationship, like I mentioned just like 2 seconds ago. But like you guys said, I feel like that probably kind of would take away from the book, because then you would know too much. It would also kind of feel like it would halt the fast-paced plot if we got like random information about Holton. So I understand why he didn't. I guess I'm just a very curious person. I wanted to know more about Holton. But besides that, I thought it was perfect, honestly.
So I'm not going to go into any grand detail on this question, because I felt the exact same way they did. I thought the length was perfect. Like I said previously, wanted him to expand on stuff, but that would ruin the story. So yeah, I thought the length was perfect on this. I wouldn't have wanted it to be any longer or any shorter. Who was your favorite character and why?
So I really enjoyed everyone. I loved Eddie and his faults. I loved Kane and his creepy weirdness. I loved Harper's sexual attention between her and Eddie for later chapters. Anyone? For next books? I don't know. I caught on to that. I don't know if you guys did. And then Delaney as a side character is really cool. I liked how smart she was, and I don't know, I just liked her involvement in the stuff. I did feel bad for Bobby. I enjoyed his character. He described him really well. And I'm curious to know about Arnold, because I feel like R.I.P. But I feel like for Arnold, like we already knew, maybe like he was in previous books and stuff like that, because it seemed like he had a relationship with Eddie. So I kind of felt bad that he, RIP'd himself out of there. So even I liked him and like the Eddie's family member a little. I mean, his wife is kind of like a biatch, but that's fine. I don't know her and her circumstances since I haven't read the rest of the previous books and stuff like that. So I shouldn't judge her too harshly. But she hurted my Eddie Flynn, and I'm not a fan of that. But that's okay because that leaves room for Harper. Hey, so yes.
You got the whole next book written out there.
I'll say I don't know how to follow that. So my favorite character, actually, before I dive into my favorite character, I want to talk about one thing Barbara said. So I also really want to find out why Arnold hated Eddie so much, because like their relationship at the beginning of the book when they first are forced to work together, like something happened, and I'm willing to bet that Arnold was in the first, second, or third book. So yeah, I'd also like to figure that out, but. Anywho, my favorite character, I thought all of them were really well written. If I had to pick a favorite, just like Barbara said, it would be Eddie. I really liked his story. It's very enthralling. He's a character that makes me want to read more of this series. I just really liked the way that he was like the way that he was created. He was just a very well written character. And it made me want to learn more about him. So he was my favorite.
Michael has a man crush on Eddie.
And
you
Lauren
have a crush
wants
on
to
Kate.
be a serial killer.
She's immolating him starting now.
Yes. So my favorite character, if you couldn't guess prior to now, because I've already said it like 6 times, was Kane. Second favorite was Flynn, but favorite was still Kane. And it was because of the way that he was written. Cavanagh did a really, really good job portraying and building and fleshing out his character. I was just continuously impressed with all of the different things that were connected and things that he thought through. And it's in a disturbing way, right? Because I'm the person that watches First 48 and all of these true crime shows that are about real murders and different things. And I think that that's interesting. It's not like I want to go out and murder people or I'm
every stereotypical meme out there about women enjoying crime podcasts.
Yes, I love crime podcasts, true crime podcasts. So,
you're not alone in that.
Yes. So anyway, I like Kane. I appreciate his character. I appreciate his meticulousness and the way that he was written. And I also just think that I can empathize and the readers can empathize with him because of some of what you learn about his history. And then also just the little details that, I guess it's not a little detail, but the fact that he can't feel pain and how that impacts his life and how that could really mess somebody up mentally as a kid too, just mental health wise. So I don't know. He was my faves. And then Eddie was the second just because he's the main character and he's meant to be everybody's favorite. But
got a little bit of judgment in that last statement. You're calling Barbara and I because we're picking the stereotypical favorite character.
I like to point out that I didn't pick anybody. I picked everybody. So.
That's true. Barbara did pick everybody, but yeah, I'm pointing that out about you.
It's fine. I can live with it. You
usually like the stereotypical character.
That's such a bad thing to like the character the author wants you to like. Wow.
It's not.
Anyway, was the ending of this book satisfying? And it's my turn to go first. Short answer, yes. Long answer,
yes.
Still yes. The ending was amazing. Holy plot twist, Batman. You find out Holden's bad, and then there's then Kane shows up, and then Bobby's in the panic room, but they've cut the phone line, and there's a firefight. Because why wouldn't there be a firefight at the end of the book? And just so many things. I had to reread that chapter. I think I reread it 3 times so I could get a grasp on just everything that happened in that room. That room at the end where you've got Kane and you've got Eddie and you've got Holden showing up. And you've got Eddie getting a gun and then
that one was really difficult for Audible.
Oh, I bet.
To follow everything. I think that I rewound that and went back and listened to it over and over because I was lost for a while. I'm there is so much happening.
It was such a frenetic scene. It was just everywhere, all this stuff happening, and it was great. I loved it. Like I said earlier, I forgot I was going to talk about this. So him not feeling pain.
No, you can't. No, too late. It's past that point.
No,
now.
I'm going to. So just deal with it. All right. Loved what they did with that. So eye rolling the whole time. Oh, he can't feel pain. Oh, cool. That's great. But then this last scene when like he's like getting plugged with bullets and just like not phased by it, like the SWAT team breaks through the window and he gets shot and takes a bullet, but he can't feel crap. So he runs up and like takes down 2 SWAT team officers. And it was just crazy. Like it made it worthwhile. The eye rolls the whole time for him not feeling any pain at the end when it was just like, holy crap, like they're fighting this guy who thinks he's invincible and is acting like he is. And it was wild. But
is it bad that I forgot that he wasn't half naked in that scene? Cause like he stole the other dude's clothes and stuff like that. I completely forgot about that. He stole. So I was picturing when I was reading that scene, the first part, I was picturing him like running around like half naked. So I was like, wait a second, he has clothes on. Like just picture like this old man like running around like, ugh. I was like, wait a second, he's got clothes on.
He's definitely clothed.
I know. I forgot he killed what's his face to put clothes on. I forgot about that.
Yeah, he killed the other lawyer. What was his name? The prosecutor. No, he didn't kill Carp. Carp survived because of a flip of the coin.
Oh yeah,
true that.
Very Two-Face-esque. But who was the lawyer?
Other, I don't know. I forget.
I can't remember his name. Anyway, doesn't matter for now. But yes, the ending was satisfying. That's the gist of my answer. Lauren?
Yes. But now I have to read the next one because, like, who the hell does he call? I need to know. So that's gonna happen. Even if I just read like the first 2 chapters just to figure out what's happening. Also, at the end, I thought, another nod to Cain, that they really brought in, like, to show his more human side in the end when he was dying. And I can't remember the line, and I meant to write it down, but it basically said, like, in his last moments, like, he looked relieved, like, or something like that, along those lines. So just showing that maybe his existence wasn't such that we might have thought it was as a reader was good. But yeah, it was a good ending. It was satisfying. The whole book was satisfying.
Yeah, I also thought it was satisfying. I wanted to go and pick up the next book of the series and just start reading it because that's how much I wanted to know more. I had a what's in the box moment, especially since it ended like that, like who does he call? Is it Harper, the wife? I want him to obviously call Harper, but yeah, beautiful ending. I mean, you expect it not to end like that. You're like, okay, it's done, whatever, and then you get this little nugget, just little nug for the next book, like who's he gonna call? And you're invested again. And it doesn't have anything to do.
You'll read the whole next book and it was all just a booty call.
I'm okay with that. I ship them, so it's fine.
All right, final question. This book was full of plot twists, neck-breaking plot twists as your head spins back and forth. Were you able to predict any of the twists and turns as the book progressed? Or did you walk into each twist and end up just as shocked at what was just happening?
So I'm not going to lie, I did not even try to predict this book, which is surprising because usually I would be with this genre trying to predict all along, but my life has been crazy and I was just listening to it in the background and I was just kind of rolling with the punches. Didn't get too deep into investigator Dutcher mode for this one. So yeah, I just kind of let it play out. Like I said, I predicted that Holton was a little bit shady. I did not predict at all that he was not portraying the juror that I thought he was portraying. So some of like the bigger plot twists I didn't predict, but also I wasn't like Barbara was doing where like going back and reading and trying to figure everything out. I was just kind of like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So all
right, so we'll pass the torch now to master predictor Barbara. Barbara, what did you think?
I'm not. So, I mean, I feel like I've really I have not even touched freaking dove in with me on my predictions and all that stuff and how I kind of did it. But a few, the Holton thing, that I feel like that doesn't even count because I didn't discover that until I feel like it was a little too late personally. I just loved reading about all that stuff. Knowing that Cain wasn't the other juror was just so, like I mentioned earlier, amazing, and I was giddy about that one. But other little things too, I wanted to figure out how he murdered him, and that slowly brings up into picture when they're talking about it during the trial, the whole he didn't murder the other dude because it was the wife and then like her bodyguard or whatever in the same bed because of the blood spatter. And that was really cool how he explained it. And it was neat when him and Harper were laying in the bed, and that's when you have that like aha moment, because it's like, okay, well, you know anything about a bed when you lay on it, so the person who's heavier like sinks and all that jazz. So that was interesting, and I just thought he did everything really well, especially with, like I mentioned way earlier, like you get Kane's perspective. So the whole time I was thinking like, okay, like what is there to solve? Like we already know who murdered them, you know, what's more? And he just like hit me with a pan in the head and be like, dumb bitch, there's more. Like, just stick with me. You'll figure this out. And I loved everything about it. Yeah, and I feel like I didn't catch all of the twists and stuff like that. I got his little nuggets that he was leaving around, so I enjoyed that.
I mean, this wasn't your typical, straight up and down roller coaster. It was more of a Hagrid's ride,
Yes.
Had to get that plug in there, Michael, because we made it almost a whole episode without it.
We did. That would have been the first one we didn't reference Harry Potter.
I can't let that happen.
I was literally thinking that, and I was going to say it in the closing, that we finally have an episode without a Harry Potter reference, and she snuck it in the final question.
The shot at the buzzer.
No joke.
I can't let that happen, Michael.
Yeah, I should have known. With you guys, I should have known. So anyway, for me, I wish I could say that I predicted the whole thing after reading the first chapter, but I can't. I'm not that good. But I like that I can't or don't predict these type of books. Like a haunted house, it's fun to walk into these situations not knowing what's coming and be shocked to your core.
Wrong.
Do we want to talk about your experience in the haunted house, Michael?
Yeah.
Wow.
Or they're refusing to go first.
Like, you guys are acting like you're putting me on Front Street. I literally just said that I like.
Hey guys, comment on anything and guess who has to go first in haunted houses?
Me or Barbara?
Right, definitely not Michael. We'll give you that one.
Guys, I say this every time, and this is my last podcast. I'm done. Can't do it anymore. No. So anyway, I try and predict things in these books, but like Barbara can attest, I am usually wrong. And she's always right. Like she acts like she's like being all modest when we're recording the podcast. Like, no, I don't predict things, but she does. She knows it. She's so good at predicting stuff. It's annoying. Do you have anything to add there, Barbara? Do you want to defend yourself, or are you just going to let that hang?
No,
she knows
I don't
it's
think
true.
I don't think so. I just like I don't know. That's just how I think.
No,
like,
don't stop it.
I don't think so. I told you I didn't predict the whole one. Like that one was a surprise. Not like.
So
anyways.
just for clarity, we've mentioned throughout this that there were tons and tons of plot twists and turns. Barbara missed one.
Well,
no, I mean, I figured, like, you guys probably knew why Bobby didn't want to mention what he was doing, extracurricular activities at night. Like, I was like, okay, he's obviously either with another woman or another man. Which one's worse in the movie industry, quote unquote, is if he's married to this darling person that they have this amazing relationship, and it doesn't really matter if it's another girl, because, LA doesn't care about that. That happens every time. But like, oh, what if he's gay? I was like, well, that's an obvious one.
I didn't predict that.
You pointing out that we might have predicted something doesn't take away your title of Master Predictor.
Whatever. You are just trying to...
I'll get you a crown. I'll send it.
Perfect. We have a picture on Instagram of Barbara wearing a crown that says Master Predictor.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like she needs a better title than that. That one's lame.
All right, well, we'll come up with a better title for Barbara than Master Predictor. But... anyway, we've gotten to this point in the podcast, so let's talk about our individual scores for this book. We'll start at the top. Barbara, what was your score?
I gave it an 8. It's, I think, tied with like 4 books now that are all my all-time favorites that I've given 8s to that I absolutely loved and enjoyed. So 8 it was. I haven't given anything higher than that, but yeah, 8. Amazing book. Loved it. Want more.
Solid, concise. Lauren, go ahead and bless this book with the highest rating you've ever given.
It's actually not. It's tied with Cinder, but 8.75 is
what if it's tied with Cinder, it's still the highest rating you've ever given.
Well, it is, but it's not like the highest. It's tied with the highest. I thought about giving it
it's like making out with your sister, Michael. It's a tie. Ooh.
Oh, God.
That's a Bobby Bones reference. If no one gets that, they always say that whenever they tie with someone. They're like, yeah, it's like making out with your sister. It's gross. It's a tie. Anyways, obviously y'all don't know that one.
Did not know that one. So I gave it 8.75. I thought about giving it higher, but I really liked Cinder too, so I gave it this rating because I really enjoyed it. I think that the author is a mastermind of crime, courtroom, drama, serial killer things.
I'm going to get you a I Heart Kane or Kane is Daddy shirt now.
Please do. I would proudly wear it. I'll teach Eliana to say Kane. It's my daughter. Instead of Dada, like she says now, she'll say Kane.
That is a terrifying thing to think about.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that, and she's probably never going to listen to this. So.
I'm going to wait till she's older and send her this episode. No, I'm just kidding. So my score for this one was an 8 out of 10. I also really liked it. Great book, great plot twist, everything I wanted in a genre like this. It was awesome. So knowing our individual scores, group score was an 8.25 out of 10, which is a pretty high overall score for us.
I think it's tied for the highest, isn't it?
It might be. I'd have to look at the list of our group scores and see, but I think it's definitely one of the higher ones for sure. Mm-hmm. But thank you so much for listening. We got to the end. We are Badass Literature Society. Don't forget, tune in next month for The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Hopefully you liked this episode. If you did, let us know. Like it on Apple Podcasts. Give us a review. Give us a rating. That stuff really matters. If you have a book recommendation, let us know on our socials. Give us a comment. Shoot us a message. However you want to get it to us, let us know. And make sure you're also following us there on both Instagram and Facebook. In both places, our handle is @BadassLitPod. We'll see you guys next month. I'm Michael.
I'm Barbara.
And this is Lauren Kane. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.